So that's me. I'm the CEO of Property Owl Group of Companies, and I'm so Property Owl Group Companies. I own multiple companies within that. So the largest one's called Specific Mechanical Systems. I'm actually going to tell you a story about Specific Mechanical Systems, and really my talk today is just going to be a group of stories that I think are some of the most important stories of my life and that have kind of shaped my career. So Property Owl Group of Companies. So Specific Mechanical Systems, we do about 30 million a year in revenues. We sell brewing and manufacturing equipment across the world. We're in 14 different countries, and they've sold over 1,500 systems across the world. And 60% of our business is in the United States, and then the rest is kind of spread out throughout the world. I also own a company called Vital Manufacturing, and that company, they've developed technology for face shields to support the COVID relief effort. And that one, we sold over 1 million of those units, and it's kind of really starting to grow over this last phase. But it's called Cap Shield, and it's a hat with a little visor shield that goes over your face that allows to protect your face without having to wear a mask, right? And it's approved in various areas. But I hate talking about the end of things. I like to talk about the beginning and where things started for me. So the stories I'm going to tell you are going to be about some of the beginning stuff. And it's really cool. Someone I used to work with is on the call. They messaged me, Thomas, which is really neat. We worked together about 15 years ago when I was in engineering. So the stories I'm going to share with you are kind of about I'll talk a little about my dyslexia. I'll talk about the first business I bought, a bus pass story. I'll talk about my brother, and I'll talk about some of my current businesses and how I was able to acquire some of the current businesses that I have. And try to be respectful on time. So just kind of help me out so I don't go too far over, because I can kind of digress and chat. But this is the whole presentation, this slide, right? And this slide's important to me, and it speaks to a lot of things. Like, that's a picture of me in grade 5, and those pants embody Kosi, right? Kosi's a very unique individual. There's nobody like me, as we're all very unique. But the difference between me is I'm very comfortable being unique. I'm very comfortable being in my own skin. I've been very comfortable like that since grade 5. And I don't try to pretend to be anyone other than what I am and who I am and how I am. And that sort of blunt honesty about who I am has really helped me in business. When I was at a stage when I was buying properties and raising capital, I tell stories about myself. And some of the stories I tell, people would look at those and like, well, why would you expose all your insecurities? And what happens when you do that is you build bonds and relationships quicker, because people start to understand who you are and what you're about at a much deeper level, and they remember it. And we all have these stories, and they shape who we are. And if I tell people a series of stories about who I am and what shaped me, they get a really clear understanding about who I am, and they get a really good understanding about if they want to do business with me or not. And I'll even tell you about a company purchase that I made, which the offer that I made was significantly lower than the other offers. But again, because it was coming from an individual who they felt like they understood who I was, they were able to do that transaction with me as opposed to the other buyer, right? So first off, I tell people about my dyslexia because it's true. I've got dyslexia, and it really messed me up as a kid, because I really thought I was stupid when I was young, because they do that thing where they make you read the books in a room, and all the kids go one by one, and the teacher makes you read one sentence each. And everybody can kind of read relatively well, and there's always 2 or 3 kids in the class that really stumble on the words. I was one of those 2 or 3 kids. And when 23 kids in the class read well, and some read exceptionally well, and you're one of the 2 or 3 that can't read so well, and you do this activity once a week, people start to call you stupid. And you start to believe it, because it's consistent. Like, why do I struggle reading so much? And that dyslexia really messed me up as a child. And it messed me up to the point where we had to do a speech. This is in grade 4. We had to do a speech in front of the class. And so I prepared my speech, and I said to myself, you know what, there's no way in hell I'm going to read this speech in front of the class because I'm going to mess it up. So I ended up taking the time to go through the speech in details, like a 5-minute speech. I ended up spending about 40 hours on the speech. Okay. Now, if you can think about a 5-minute speech and spending 40 hours in it, you've gone over that speech so many times that you've memorized it frontwards, backwards. And something remarkable happened when I did the speech the first time was I blew the socks off the speech, right? Because I was so on point with it. I could move around the class. I had mannerisms because I'd done it so many times. And the whole class was like, wow, teachers like, Kosi, you're such an incredible public speaker. That was a single greatest turning point in my life and pivotal moment because I saw the link between hard work and results. And it wasn't that I was such a great natural speaker. It was the fact that I had spent 80 times more than the average student had spent on an activity. And because I did that, the result was so much better than everybody else's results. And I found the link between, okay, if you want to do something and you put the effort in, you put more effort than other people are willing to put into a certain thing, ultimately your results are going to pan out and it's going to go well. And that's what the story behind my dyslexia and how that helped me be a better person, because I saw a really early link between hard work and results. And that helped me get into engineering. And without getting into specifics, like I literally get into engineering. I was like 0.5%. Like I was like the bottom of the class, and statistically I should have failed out in the first year or the second year, because 1/3 fail out the first year, 1/3 fail out the second year. Statistically I shouldn't have made it through. But again, I worked a lot harder than everybody else. So while people were out partying, drinking, I was studying. So because I worked so much harder, put a lot more effort in, I got results. First business I had was when I was 10. And it was like that need. You know, my parents were very poor, and I wanted candy, and I didn't have money for candy. So I went and collected pop bottles around the neighborhood. And I would use that money that I collected with pop bottles, because I saw other people going around collecting pop bottles. So I just did it, and that was my business. I was collecting pop bottles, and then I would work with one of the parents. We had a partnership where she'd bring the pop bottles in, and then we'd pay for the gas money, and we'd collect the money. So I'd use the money and buy candies. And at first, my parents were like, "Where did you get all this money from to buy all these candies?" You know, they thought maybe I stole it, and then I explained to them how I was getting the money, and they were kind of impressed. So that was the first business. So business and entrepreneurship has always been in my DNA, right? And I think for a lot of people, it is in your DNA. You know, at a young age, if this is something that's into you, your brain clicks differently. And not to say, I think real estate's one of those investments that it kind of transcends all that. You don't have to be like in your DNA to be a real estate investor necessarily. You have to have an available amount of capital or and want to do better with that capital. It's an interesting thing that I tell people is if you look at the 10 biggest companies in the world 100 years ago, the majority of them have gone bankrupt. And if I look at the 10 biggest companies today, in 100 years, the majority of them will be bankrupt. But if you look at the people that have kept their wealth, it's the people who invested in real estate. So if you go down to the downtown core of Vancouver, the families that took their money out of their businesses and reinvested in real estate have the generational wealth. The ones that didn't, we don't even know anymore, right? The money's gone because they didn't reinvest the money. And that's the key thing for me in real estate. Real estate, in my opinion, is a number one tool for building wealth and wealth generation. I don't view it as a tool for generating income at all. I don't think it's a very good tool for generating income. I think there's a lot of other vehicles that perform much better, but wealth, it's the number one tool for wealth. And the bus pass story, again, it just speaks to my childhood. When I was, again, around the grade 4 age, I lost my bus pass. And, you know, my parents used to have to budget to get us bus passes at the start of the month. And I couldn't tell my parents that I'd lost my bus pass. I lost it on like the day 5 of the month, right? And I couldn't tell my parents that I lost my bus pass. So for the rest of the month, I had to walk to and from school because I didn't want to have the conversation with my parents about losing my bus pass, because that $90 I knew they couldn't afford. And I knew they would try everything to be able to afford to get me the $90. So instead of doing that, I was walking over an hour a day to go to and from school. This is in Edmonton, and thankfully it wasn't one of the colder months. But that story, it's just a reminder of what my life was like at that time and always wanting more. And I had my brother, as he saw me doing this, he started to walk with me, right? So he had his brother bus pass. I've got two brothers, one a year older than me and one 3 years older than me. My oldest brother was 3 years older. He'd walk with me because again, we wouldn't want to tell our parents about this, but he'd walk with me to school and walk with me back. And it's an important story because that same brother, he was also in a way entrepreneurial, and same parents, same household, but at a young age he decided to get involved in drugs that ultimately cost him his life. And around this time I had said to myself, I was an engineer at the time, so this was going back to about 2006. And I said to myself, he was a good person at heart. And I remember the bus pass and how he used to walk me to school, even though he had his own bus pass. He'd walk with me. And I remember, he got involved in something that wasn't good, but at his heart, he was a good person. I've always wanted to find a way to kind of honor him. So I got into business and really started to push my real estate. At the time, I owned 2 or 3 properties. I really started to push my real estate, started to do partnerships with people to really grow my portfolio. And then ultimately, I grew my portfolio so large that I had millions of dollars worth of net worth. And when I went to buy my first company, I could use the net worth that I had in real estate as security to help acquire companies. And when you look at real estate and you look at companies, they're very similar. They're both businesses, right? And the nice part about a company is when you buy real estate investors know how to finance things really well. And when you learn how to finance things really well and you start to finance companies in a similar fashion, you can do some pretty cool things when it comes to structuring business deals and financing. And when I bought my first company, and this kind of speaks to who I am, I'm coming in as an individual. I'm coming as an individual that has some net worth, but I don't have, hundreds of millions of dollars to my name. And I'm up against a private equity firm that has hundreds of millions of dollars to their name. And we both go to buy the same company. The private equity firm offers a lot more money than I offer, right? By about 20% more. Enough, and we're talking in the millions, enough that most people would take that offer. But the owners of the company didn't take the offer. They took my offer. And they said, you know what, Kosi, we're going to work with you to see that you can buy the company, because 2 things. We see that you care. This has been my whole life, right? My whole life. That same little boy that you see in this picture, that little boy's dream was to own businesses, to honor his brother, and to honor his parents so that they don't have to live in poverty their whole life. And that story shows when I speak to people, and it shows when I spoke to the owners, and they felt that story and they believed in my vision of what I was trying to accomplish and what I was trying to do. And because of that, they sold the company to me. And I was able to structure that deal, and I was able to get over 80% financing on the company, right? So, so you're looking at a 10-figure company that I was able to buy and get over 80% financing through, and then raise capital through partners and really put the deal together. So again, that was the first of many. And by securing that one, it's allowed me to use the revenues and the income that I've gotten from the company to buy additional real estate. So I still buy real estate, only now I look to buy out portfolios, right? So I'm working on a portfolio deal. There's about over 100 commercial units in Saskatchewan that I'm about to close on, and it's the same sort of principles that I learned when I started, 17 years ago, and the same base core principles that I looked at to buy my initial real estate, only it's just a different scale of numbers, right? The numbers are just bigger, but the principles are still the same. The fundamental things are still the same. And, currently I'm still looking at companies, and I look to acquire companies anywhere from kind of 50 to $100 million. They need to have at least 100 employees ish, and good systems in place, and have been around for at least 20 years. And that's what I look to purchase. That's what we look to purchase today. And I also look to purchase companies that I can help grow. So I look for companies that I can help grow. And then as you buy the company, take the cash flows out of the company and use them to buy additional real estate. Because 20 years from now, I don't know if the companies that I own are still going to be in business, but I know the real estate that I bought with the incomes that I generated, I know those will still be around. And I know if they stay around, the generational wealth piece gets to carry on. So I share with you a series of stories because, again, that's the best way for you to understand my life, right? I do presentations, and whenever I do presentations, I struggle with, because I don't like slides. I don't like da da da. So it's usually maximum of one slide, and that's the slide you're going to get, is this one right here. But if you look in that kid's eyes, you see passion, you see a smile, you see the funky pants, you see the kid that doesn't care what he looks like. When you look at this kid today, and I'm 30, oh, I'm 38 now. I turn 39 next week. But you see this kid today, it's dreads. It's as he is, how he is, always and forever. Doesn't matter how little or how much money I have. I'm still the same person. I'm still the same dude. Still have dyslexia. Still struggle reading. Still have a lot of really good people around me that help to support the vision that I have. Still trying to honor my brother, and still making sure my parents are okay.